What I saw on the weekend was just putrid. From senior players who have been there a long, long time, who keep saying how much they love the club. Well, at the moment, I'm seeing players play for cash, not for their club.
You know, some of the players that are playing aren't up to AFL standards. There's a lot of players there that can't play the game at the moment. I don't really know when they're going to turn it around.
But ultimately, it's the senior players in there training with them, teaching them how to train. And then there's the next stage of once you've learned how to train like a professional, now you need to be able to play like one. And then obviously then compete. They're not even at the compete stage. So that's how far back this list is.
I think it's been a 2 or 3 year build to the sport. I think the list management heard a couple of years ago I'm not moving that list around. So it is what it is, and they have to act pretty quick now.
They need a full clean out, mate. They need players that give a toss, mate, because there's too many out there right now. And I'm not talking to young blokes, I'm only talking senior players that just don't care, and it shows.
Hello and welcome to Footy Classified. As darkness further descended on the West Coast Eagles as a football club, moves already afoot to create change heading into 2024. The full, albeit slightly different look, Footy Classified team has assembled the 300-game champion from Port Adelaide, Kane Corns. Cornsy,
thanks, Scoop.
Great to have you. The 5-time All-Australian from the Bombers, Matthew Lordy, and the 4-time Premiership player, the Brownlow medalist, and the current coach of the Hawthorn Football Club, Sam Mitchell, here for the entirety of the show. Sam, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Who are you most scared of, Kane or Lloydie tonight?
I'm a bit closer to Kane, so I'm a bit worried about Lloydie up the other end, and he didn't give me much before the show, so I'm a bit nervous.
Well, we'll get into it. Unfortunately, it's a devastating and a tragic situation that is happening to a club that you know all too well, Sam, and that is the West Coast Eagles. The club's worst ever defeat on Saturday night at the hands of the Sydney Swans. Their captain, Luke Shuey, forced to front the media only hours ago.
We've seen some small fruits start to grow, but we're not the finished product. But I don't know how many times I can say it. It'll turn around soon, and I'm looking forward to, whether I'm here or not, watching these young guys hit their prime, and Simo will probably still be coaching, and the club will be back up the top end of the ladder, and won't be all as doom and gloom as what it is now.
Never as good as it seems, ever as bad as it seems, what Lee Matthews has always said. But Lloydie, it seems pretty bad at the moment, and the local media have not missed the Eagles.
I know we just grab little parts of conferences, but I'm not sure he would truly believe what he said there, Luke Shuey. You know, small little wins. We're just not seeing any. That's the difficult part for the West Coast Eagles. Like, they were 2 goals down within 90 seconds of football. Then they're 9 goals down within a quarter of football, and all they'd be asking for really is for. They've got to that stage where give us 15 minutes, give us 20 minutes, give us a quarter. But they're not even at that stage. That's how they can't really hang off any green shoots, as Brendan Bolton used a while back.
Cornsy, I've got to say, you've been years ahead of this. You used words 2 or 3 years ago about the Eagles about arrogant, entitled. You also used the word unfit. And it was only just as we went to air tonight that Warren Cofer, the long-time fitness boss of the West Coast Eagles for 13 years, has departed. Now, the cynical view, Cornsy, would be that he's being used as a fall guy. It sounds like this move has been several weeks, maybe even longer in the making.
Yeah, it's unsurprising, isn't it? It is the first big change. It won't be the last. They'll need to look at their list management, clearly the coaching and the coach. My firm belief is that he's on borrowed time clearly now, whether that's this week, whether that's in a month, or whether it's at the end of the year. Adam Simpson can't continue to be the coach with a record like that. No coach in world sport would survive a record. Lordy wouldn't survive that at Haileybury, let alone AFL football. And clearly there is a contract there in place, so I don't blame Adam for not walking away.
That's a big part of it, which we'll get to.
That is the way it is going, but the high performance ban goes, and that is reasonable under the circumstances, but he won't be the last. There's their injury list. Scoop and Lloydie, but I'm just not sure there's any saving graces on there. There's no Clayton Olivers on that list. Now, Liam Ryan would be lovely to have. Cripps would be nice to have.
Numbers surely
understand that, and the selection integrity and the pressure on the players that are getting a game that shouldn't be, if those players were fit, is real, and that is right, and that is an excuse. But, Lordo, there's no star players on that list.
I want to ask Sam, though, as a coach, when you have a injury list like that, where do you start? I know there's no blame and you're all in it together, but where would you start in that situation as the West Coast Eagles?
Oh, I mean, I think you have to review things really clearly. And I look at that list and you see hamstrings, and at Hawthorn we would call them controllable injuries. But they've had a lot of injuries where it's an ankle, or, they've got an ACL of one of their young good players, and, a lot of uncontrollable injuries as well. So I think you have to break it up into those two areas and have a look at your training methods and try to keep as many fit players on the park as you can. And that's proving difficult for them.
I know it was the end of your career, and it'd be nothing like Hawthorn, but how do you feel, given the time that you spent there, watching what's happened to West Coast?
Yeah, well, you got relationships with some of the people there, of course, and I had a long time with Adam Simpson as an assistant at Hawthorn, and then worked in a premiership year in 2018, which doesn't feel like that long ago, to be honest. And Luke Shuey, having watched his growth for a couple of years over there, he was a fantastic person. Warren Coford, I had worked under him as my fitness boss for a year, and he did a great job. So having a look at all these people going through this difficult situation, I think you got a feel for what they're going through at the moment, and the media bubble that they'd be in WA would be significant. And if you compare it to South Australia, where both teams are going pretty well, it'd be so different.
So the media bubble, Cornsey and Lloyd, is a part of this, and I know different circumstances to what you went through with Alistair Clarkson at Hawthorn, but this is becoming a lot about Adam Simpson's contract as well. Now, I'm not sitting here saying that West Coast want him to leave as coach, but when you're on more than $800,000 with no exit clauses in it because of when it was done for 2 more years, which has to be part of a soft cap. Now, granted, they are wealthy enough to potentially pay a tax, but his contract, which is locked in, is becoming a big strand of this story.
Yeah, my opinion is that is the only reason he's staying, and that's from the outside clearly. But if you look at what a coach's job is to get the best out of your players and maximise their abilities. Is that happening? No. Then you look for job satisfaction. Are you enjoying the job? Are you passionate? Are you bouncing out of bed? The observation from the outside is, well, how could you be? And he looks tired and he looks combative, your family gets involved in this, I'm sure, with the coverage of the West Australian, which we've seen, which would be so difficult. So then I think, well, why is he staying? And the only reason I can think of is that contract, and that's
not that he loves coaching.
No, or does it look like? to you? Does it look like he loves coaching?
But no one Sam wouldn't have enjoyed coaching.
It's been 3 years. Like, this has been such a long time. We focus on this year too much. This has been building, as you said, for 3 years. The back half of 2021, they won 2 games last year. They were whinging and crying through COVID. I understand that was a brutal situation, but they didn't handle it as well as some of the other clubs had. So I think that's the only thing standing in the way.
I think you probably undersell the relationship side. I think as a coach, you're trying to get the best out of these players. And Adam Simpson would wake up, and when he fronts the media, that's not going to be the favourite part of the coaching, which is what we all see. But he's going to be working with every one of those players to try and get the best out of them. And so that's where your job satisfaction has to come.
But Sam, we've got some vision of the senior players, and the effort. So when you say you enjoy working with the players, this must be confronting for him to see efforts like this from players that are good players. These aren't young players. I deliberately looked at senior players here. Kelly. So that would be alarming, wouldn't it? When you're a senior coach, you know what they're capable of and they're delivering that.
Yeah, well, I know in our situation at Hawthorn, as players lose confidence, they start to do things that you normally wouldn't. A lot of these situations are also in the middle of the ground on a cricket pitch where they don't normally play. So there are small things like that, but I think going to ground is one of the things you start to do when you lose confidence. And, we see some of the senior players. I mean, Gaffey is chasing pretty hard in that clip.
I made the point to Sam on radio tonight that I think everyone wants to see the reaction. So they want to see the big head roll, and that's Adam Simpson. But I part admire the West Coast Eagles that what does one quick decision make? I think it's probably gone on for too long where they've been comfortable, and I agree with all that. But they need to look at every single person in that football club. They need to look at their football boss. They need to look at their CEO. They need to look at the board. I think that's just, we all focus on Adam Simpson a lot, but I think it's so far deeper than that they have to look at.
So I tend to agree with you, Lloydie, but the problem is that they should have been doing these big reviews 2-3 years ago so that we didn't get to midway through 2023. Now everyone's calling for blood, and it is a little unbecoming, and no one wants to be death riding Adam Simpson because of what he's achieved in the game and his standing in the game. But it's almost got to the point, Kane, where the club needs to do something to say, hey, these standards just simply aren't acceptable.
And for him as well, like probably 12 months ago, he'd walk into another senior coaching job. That may not be the case now.
So it's impacting his brand, you think?
Well, I think so. Like, it'll be hard to hire him now. Look, I think he would definitely get a job in football again. Absolutely, he would. Premiership coach and, director of coaching or senior assistant, yes. But senior coach again, if this continues to happen, an effort like that from senior players, I think that is more unrealistic by the week.
Sam, can I just quickly ask Sam Mitchell, what's his biggest strength, Adam? Because I think it's lost now, I think, over the last 3 years. But when you coach a premiership together, what's his greatest asset as a coach?
Well, I think that's where the personnel has really hurt him, because his great strength as a coach was his game understanding, and what he had a great capacity to do was get everyone on the same page. And to get everyone, singing from the same page of the hymn book and knowing what each other were going to do. And because of the lack of, if you take McGovern out of any team, and we're finding it at the moment with Sicily, is such a significant player, and that's one player. They also don't have Hearn and Barras and all of these players not playing for them. So they've come. What his biggest strength is, he's not able to use.
Yeah, it's certainly an interesting time ahead for Adam Simpson. And to Kane's point, about potentially impacting the brand, everything now you can view through the prism of Damien Hardwick's potential availability. You could probably remove the word potential after his spot on the Dill and Friends podcast.
I'd be lying if I said I couldn't see myself doing it. I love it. I miss it. I've been out for 2 weeks and I wanted to miss it, if that made sense. Yeah. But I need to decompress for a while. I need to go away. I need to reflect. I'll go overseas and I'll still watch the Tigers play and I'll still watch other games as much as I can. And, at some stage I'll probably step back in. When that is, I'm not too sure.
Well, that sounds to me like a man who's ready to coach again, to be honest. Now, last year previously we've had very different markets with the likes of Ross Lyon, Brad Scott and Alistair Clarkson all available. This time's a little different. Uze, G in Syracuse and McWalter, we know, is basically doing a job interview at Richmond, and Ash Hansen, the man who's number 2 to Michael Voss at Carlton. Hardwick, you think, has to coach next year, Cornsey, and then what happens to those two men on the right, Adam Simpson and Ken Hinkley, who's yet to be offered a new contract by Port?
Lordy, I was surprised he was refreshed quickly. And he spoke about being bored and the fact that he's looking things to do, the fact that he misses the structure of football. Says to me that he wants to coach again next year if there's an opportunity for him. Would Richmond be a little bit disappointed in that, and could they have addressed the situation by perhaps sitting him down and giving him a month off so he was refreshed?
No, I think it's a win-win for both Damien and the club. I think when you've been at one place for 14 years, he spoke about the message that he tried to spin over and over again, tried to cook the sausage 1,001 times, Sam. You'd be able to understand, can you, that you can lose your passion maybe at that one club, but you could renew yourself somewhere else. Can you see how that can happen?
It's an interesting. I hadn't seen that until just then, and I thought, I understand that you can get tired of the job, and I certainly am nowhere near that at my young stage. And I think sometimes as a young coach, you just so much joy in the newness of it all. But I do understand when you've been doing it for a long time. But 2 weeks, I think we need to appreciate that it's a tough job that everyone talks about, but it's a great job to have, and I think he's appreciating that right now.
2 months in Europe will help him appreciate it.
You think he'll coach next year?
He'd have to be an unbackable favourite to coach.
Do you think it changes the West Coast situation now? They were so adamant they're staying with Adam Simpson and he's going to rebuild. Hearing that from Hardwick, do you think they'd be negligent not to make the phone call?
He's not going to go to West Coast.
Why not?
Well, you couldn't have Damien Hardwick's...
There's only 18 jobs.
You couldn't have Damien Hardwick's record and risk going to West Coast in the state that they're in. You just couldn't. You'd have to be a first-time
You'd have
coach.
to pick up the phone and ask the question.
Oh, you would, but I think he would answer the phone and say no pretty quickly. It's going to have to be...
Pretty rare to go to a club that's successful. They changed their clubs for a reason. Ken Hinkley's not going anywhere. He'll stay. So there's not...
Are you announcing that officially?
No, I'm not. I'd be staggered if he left.
So he's not staying?
No, he's 95 to 98% staying.
Okay, that's pretty close